So hi everyone, I'm Luciano. I'm one of the core maintainers for PyMC Free. So I started out during my postdoc. I was working in cognitive neuroscience and doing some models, and there were some things that I just needed a package to do Monte Carlo, Markov chain Monte Carlo. I said, oh damn it, there has to be something around that does this. And so I stumbled upon PyMC Free, and I really loved the format. I started to interact at the Discourse channel, and I found out that there were some kind of things that I needed that didn't work, and I started contributing, and I found that the community was super open, and the other core developers and maintainers were also super open to like random contributions from people. So I really loved the atmosphere that was there. That was one of the most enjoyable things of contributing to PyMC Free. And I also really liked the challenges, like the technical challenges that were available, and all of the stuff that I learned from more of a computational engineering point of view, and me being from cognitive neuroscience was completely outside of my scope. So what I find most challenging of being an open source maintainer now is time, basically. So for all of us that have work work that doesn't allow us to actively contribute during our working hours, we have to devote time of our personal life to maintain the libraries. And for us that have families and other things that we have to take care of during that time, it's really difficult to balance the load of giving your time for things that are work related or not exactly work related, but you really enjoy, but you can't manage to handle those and devote more time or all of the time that you would like to maintain the things at the quality that you would really like to achieve. And this, I think, is one of the most important difficulties for open source development in general, that more companies should be able to actively support their employees to contribute to open source during their working hours. Because in the end, most companies use open source software for their private work. And most of them actually disallow their employees from contributing.
So I started to use PyMC Free around the beginning of my postdoc, and at the time it was still the early days of PyMC Free, so there was a bit of bugs, there was not a lot of documentations, and I always reach out to Thomas, and at the time he always answered my questions, helped me to debug, being super patient and super helpful. So when I was a bit more comfortable on my programming skills and my Bayesian modeling skills, I started to also try to give back to community a little bit. So I started also helping users on GitHub, try to fix some bugs, and I guess that's how what makes me wanting to be a maintainer of PyMC. So the most rewarding and most challenging being an open source software developer these days, I would say, is to maintain a healthy community. In my opinion, I think only focusing on tech is not a good answer to open source development, because it's more helpful to understand your users and knowing that what your users actually need, so you can prioritize features, bug fix, and also once you have a healthy community, you can also help users help each other and also spark new ideas. And I think that's why PyMC Free is putting quite a lot of efforts on Discord channels, so to make sure that we can foster a healthy community. I would say is don't hold one package, one language, one framework to rule them all, that kind of attitude. Different implementations have different pros and cons. What works for you does not necessarily mean it works for others. So I guess the diversity in implementations, in ideas, is also goes a long ways as well.
My first experiences with statistical computing were all on closed proprietary platforms. I was trained to use these systems like expensive graphing calculators without understanding the core mechanics of how the software worked. And as a grad student in engineering statistics, I started trying to do research like this. It was really frustrating. I didn't get anywhere, so I decided to invest the time to start learning open source tools in the hope that it would help provide more opportunities. I've used PyMC3 for the past 5 years. I've published numerous scientific papers which critically depend on it, and I've seen firsthand how building a large, inclusive community and getting consensus from a range of users and developers has pushed the project towards becoming an incredibly flexible tool for analyzing data. And I've focused on using PyMC3 in my own work because it's the only software tool for statistics that affords me the latitude to create my own statistical methods on the fly and still have confidence that the underlying computational engine can provide solid inference. It also combines an extremely readable high-level API for simple things, and yet is extensible via Theano for unique one-off computations. I've used PyMC3 for everything from neural networks to spatial statistics to even modeling physical systems. I also find that because the code itself is an object of community discussion, an open source project can serve as a meeting place for people with wildly different interests. I know that through learning about PyMC3, I've come to understand the goals and methods of biostatisticians, political scientists, as well as researchers in artificial intelligence. And that's an experience that I never had before when I was working with proprietary software.
Hello, I'm Corrie Bartelheimer. I like to use PyMC to teach Bayesian statistics since, in my opinion, it bridges the math and code world very well. As a mathematician, I personally find mathematical formula helpful to understand a statistical concept. However, especially for beginners, formulas can be rather intimidating. So writing out the statistical model in code makes it much easier to understand what happens at each step. PyMC also has the advantage that it stays very close to the mathematical model while also using a programming language that's very popular with both beginners and software developers. So newcomers to Bayesian modeling can then write their models in a programming language they're already familiar with.
Hello, my name is Austin Rochford. I am the Chief Data Scientist at Keyboat Commerce. I have been a PyMC3 core contributor for, I want to say, 5 or 6 years at this point, and I just wanted to answer some of the questions that Tidelift has posed. So the first one is, what led me to become a maintainer of PyMC3? And as a former mathematician, I found the Bayesian paradigm very elegant when I started to transition to statistics and data science. And so when I was figuring out how to leave academia for industry, I wanted to show that I could program. I found PyMC3 and some of the great open source books around it. And the ability to translate almost directly from the math that I had in my mind to code got me hooked. Thomas Vicky suggested I could contribute some of my example notebooks to the PyMC3 documentation, and my contributions just expanded from there. The second question is, what do I see as the most interesting and what do I find most interesting and challenging about using open source software in industry? There's a couple of dimensions here. There are procedural challenges around using open source in industry, right? Which is mainly around working with legal to review licenses, although this has gotten better in the past few years as lots of people have moved to Apache or, commercial friendly licenses. A more technical issue is versioning. Many open source maintainers work from the master branch, and I do this myself with PyMC3, but that's often not practical in industry, right? We can't update production every time someone pushes or merges a PR to an open source software package. So many companies operate their own private package registries to ensure that there's a way to use a version of an open source library that we have confidence is compatible with the rest of our production code. And maintaining those private repositories is a hassle. And so that's a challenge as well, and adds just kind of a lot of extra work over and above typing, import PyMC3 or whatever. And then, so what do I see as the key challenges to making open source in general work better? I see diversity as a big problem to be solved in open source. If you look at the core PyMC3 team, PyMC team in general, most of us are white men in North America or Western Europe. I'm proud of the code we've shipped, personally, but I think it would be better with more diverse contributors. And I'm happy that the upcoming first PyMC Con, our first convention, or conference rather, has a diversity and inclusion chair, and I am looking forward to increasing the diversity of our contributors.
Hi everyone, my name is Andorra. I'm a core developer of ArviZ and PyMC. And well, I started using PyMC 3 when doing electoral forecasting models, and you don't have a lot of data there and you care about uncertainty, so the Bayesian framework is really natural, I'd say. And well, when I started 2 years ago, I was really seduced by the elegance of the Bayesian framework and PyMC's API, but I was also blown away, to be honest, by how welcoming and helpful people were with beginners. You could really see that you're not alone in this, and that it's really open, that there are no barriers to contributions. So it doesn't matter if you don't have the right degree, as I do. I have degrees in management and social science, but if you work hard and, well, you can make it. And you will make tremendous progress along the way because you'll work with very knowledgeable people. So you could say, as many people say of Python, that I came to PyMC for the language and I stayed for the community. But that wouldn't be totally true, I think, because, well, I still love building models and improving the PyMC codebase. And the main challenge here, and it's a challenge for all open source software, I guess, is that all big contributions are opportunity costs. Since all our OSS work is free, I have to take time off a paying job, and I can't always do that. And well, it's really a shame, because in the PyMC team, for instance, we all know that there are fixes we'd like to work on, and that would be very beneficial to the community, but we just can't afford to take the time and do it. And I think this will also help with diversity, as people who really never can work for free would not have the possibility to join. So this would lower barriers to entry even more. So that's where I think Tidelift's project is really important and interesting. And to me, one of the key challenges of the future of OSS is to better link open source contributions and open source consumption so that everything can fit together.
Almost all development teams use open source today because it helps them move quickly and stay efficient.
We love open source, except when we're slowed by frustrating issues. Security vulnerabilities that take a fire drill to patch, dependencies randomly breaking when we update packages, or the legal team asking to see a list of every open source license we use. So how do we get the awesome parts of open source without being slowed down by the not so awesome?
That's where Tidelift comes in. Tidelift connects to your software development process to understand which open source packages you use. You get a single subscription from Tidelift that includes the security, maintenance, and legal compliance assurances you need for those packages. And Tidelift is on call to help you resolve issues that come up along the way. Your subscription pays the maintainers of the exact packages you use. The more Tidelift subscribers that use these packages, the more the maintainers get paid. That gives them the time and motivation to maintain their code well, and ensures it keeps getting better too.
That's great. But what if one of the packages I use isn't part of the Tidelift subscription yet?
The subscription already covers many high-profile packages. And as more subscribers join, the pooled subscription fees create the incentive for more maintainers to support their packages too.
So the Tidelift subscription gives me one place for dependable open source, backed by the experts who created it? That just makes sense.
Exactly.